list sucks. This list sucks. This list sucks. This list sucks. It sucks.
Yes, it does.
What's going on?
We're back. This list
Yeah.
sucks. I'm JB.
I'm Mike.
Thanks again for joining us. As you can see, if you're watching this on video, we are not together tonight. Unfortunately, COVID is closing in around us.
Dude, it's like a ring of terrible, terrible fire that just slowly gets a little bit closer. So this week it was not on me, but on me because I had a coworker that 100% has COVID, and so far so good for me. Like, I feel good. I don't have any symptoms, but still, we gotta all do our part to be safe. And
We got to play it safe. So we're going to both get tests, and hopefully next week we'll be back together. And next week we will also have video finally of us live. So
only instead of it being like this tiny little picture of JB and this big stupid picture of me, it'll be hopefully like an equally small picture of both of us or something.
yeah, exactly. We don't really want to make you look at us any more than is necessary.
All right, so JB and I were talking before the show, and of course it's New Music Friday, but boy, this new music this Friday really sucked. So instead, what we did was we decided to kind of go back to the well. So, JB, you want to tell them what we got going on?
Regarding the poll?
Yeah, do it.
Yeah, so me and Mike got to talking recently about how I was really kind of in love with Fiona Apple's new record, Fetch the Bolt Cutters, that came out this year. And he gave it a listen, and he liked it. You liked it, right?
It's a great record.
But
It's a really, really great record.
Noticed some immediate similarities to Ani DiFranco. And so he kind of posed the question of comparing Ani DiFranco's record. What was the name of that one again?
Little Plastic Castles.
Little Plastic Castles with Fetch the Bolt Cutters, which, and now that I kind of think about it, maybe we should have done an older Fiona Apple record just so they were similar time frames, but that's okay. So I finally listened to Little Plastic Castles this week, and I liked it a lot. It was so she like raps a lot, which I didn't really expect. I mean, I don't even know if that's the right word. What's that?
You think that she's rapping?
She's like talking. I mean, it's poetry, but it's almost like in a rap format.
Which I think is funny because in a way I would like I've gone back and looked at what Ani DiFranco when she did Little Plastic Castles, which I think was 1996. If you go back and look at what Fiona Apple was doing at the same time, I kind of don't want that comparison because that's a really, really great album. I'm pretty sure that that's when Fiona Apple released Tidal. Tidal would probably be the most close comparison in terms chronologically to Little Plastic Castles, and I mean that album is really, really good from Fiona Apple.
Yeah, no, they're both really good though, and I definitely dug Ani DiFranco, someone I didn't really have a lot of exposure to before, so I'm gonna have to dig a little further into her. But my girlfriend Katie actually said something, and she said that and she likes Ani DiFranco, but she finds Fiona Apple a lot easier to sing along to, and she likes singing along to the lyrics. And I totally get that because a lot of the Ani DiFranco stuff, like a lot of it was spoken word, and you know, there's definitely some melody going on, but I don't know how easy it is to sing along with a lot of her stuff. What do you think about that?
Listen, I think that's super fair. I think that's and if you're talking about just the sing-song ability of it, yeah. I think Fiona Apple is a lot easier in a lot of ways. It's more accessible from that standpoint. But one of the things, and Little Plastic Castles is a really great example of, you know, Ani DiFranco is probably every bit as much a poet as she is a songwriter.
Yeah.
One of the things that I was hoping would stand out to you was her guitar work on that album it's really wild.
Does she play? Is she the one playing guitar? Okay, that definitely means something. And I think Fiona plays most of the piano on her records. So, you know, they both have that instrumental ability going for them.
No, but listen, go back and what I want you to think about is Ani DeFranco. To me, when she plays that acoustic almost as a percussion instrument. If that makes sense.
Definitely, and I like that kind of stuff. And I was also going to say, that was just my first listen through. I plan to do another one this week, and I'd like us to revisit this next week also,
100.
because we do have a little Facebook poll on our page right now, and it's not a technical poll because Facebook's poll tool is down right now, but it's up as a post, and we just have it up as vote for your favorite in the comments. And I actually have it pulled up right now because we already have quite a few people who have weighed in on it. Should we dish that out right now as far as?
Listen, there's no time like now to tell me how wrong I am. So please.
So when you say you're wrong, are you like on the side of? Are you? Is that your horse?
Listen, I really appreciate what Fiona Apple does, but I'm on team Little Plastic Castles.
For sure. 100%. Yeah, I respect that. So yeah, we have 5 votes so far, and they are all for Fiona. I hate to say it, but Jillian says Fiona. Katie says Fiona Apple. Ricky says Fiona Apple gets my vote. Nicole says Fiona. Bryce says Fiona. I mean, she's Fiona Apple. Come on, man. And actually,
listen, there are some people in the world that would feel the exact same way about Ani DeFranco.
I 100% agree with that. But this is another little. So I posted the post says vote for your favorite record between these two. Fiona Apple, Fetch the Bolt Cutters, and Ani DeFranco, Little Plastic Castle. And Bryce's first comment was, gonna have to go with Joe's Garage by Frank Zappa. So. You hear me okay?
You cut out there right when you were describing the 2 different albums in the poll. You cut out a little bit. So repeat that one.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, so Bryce's comment, because the post basically asked you to pick your favorite album between those 2, and Bryce's first comment said, "Gonna have to go with Joe's Garage by Frank Zappa." But then he revised it and said Fiona.
Oh well, fuck him, Bryce. You should have just left it as it was. You should have just left it as it was. I would have respected that a whole lot more. Hey, listen, because we've already had a little bit of this. Everybody that's listening, please be patient. Obviously, we're trying to work through some kinks of dealing with Corona and making our young fledgling podcast, and so we appreciate everybody's understanding when it comes to trying to deal with some of the lag that we're going to have throughout the course of this thing. And hopefully it's not too bad.
Hopefully it's not bad, but it's inevitably there will be a little bit of it. So, and yeah, for those not watching on video, we are doing this via FaceTime, so that's what we're talking about. Okay.
So, but with that being said, do we got anything else on the top of this thing?
I don't think so. I think we're ready to get into it.
All right.
So, we're picking it up back on Rolling Stone's list of the greatest 500 albums of all time. We've made it through the first 25, which is pretty exciting. There's something to be said for that. That's a good number. And last week we went through and picked all our favorite records from the first 5. So go back and listen to last week's episode if you want to check that out. And that's another thing we're going to keep doing is at the end of each 5, we're going to each pick our own favorite records. So we'll be doing that at the end of today's episode. But coming in at number 475 today is Sheryl Crow's debut album, self-titled, 1996. Description: the Missouri gal finally got to make an album her way in 1996 with her self-titled, self-produced smash, an ingenious mix of roots rock, raunch, and vengeful wit. As Crow told Rolling Stone, "My only objective on this record was to get under people's skin because I was feeling like I had so much shit to hurl at the tape. Every day is a winding road and a change would do you good. Rock like a feminist exile on Main Street, while If It Makes You Happy became an anthem for bad girls of all ages." So yeah, this one, you were quite familiar with this one, right, Mike?
Yeah. Even before this week, I've listened to this album a ton, and it's funny because in reading this description from Rolling Stone, them talking about it like a feminist exile on Main Street.
I like that.
Well, okay, so I was kind of curious as to what you thought about that because I will admit right now, while we're still deep into the 400s, that the Rolling Stones is a band that it's never clicked with me.
Really?
I mean, listen, the all of the hits I love, but as I mean, just as a band, you know, like if you were to tell me, man, Exile on Main Street is one of the greatest records of all time, I'd be like, okay.
Have you spent a lot of time with Exile?
No, no.
Yeah.
I mean, and I've tried probably 3 or 4 times, you know, and so that's about the extent that I've listened to it. And it's just, like I said, it's just never really clicked with me.
Nothing wrong with that at all. I've definitely heard some people say that about the Stones. It seems to be like a situation where you either get it and you don't, and most people do get it. But I'm not saying that you don't get it, but most people don't like it. Doesn't some people it just doesn't resonate with them, you know? And
Yeah, and to me, I would say it's more a resonation because the songs that I do like from the Rolling Stones, I love them.
yeah,
Right, really, really love them. So to me, when they work for my ears, they work unbelievably well.
and I'm also gonna say like I'm not like a die-hard Rolling Stones fan. Like I like the Rolling Stones a lot, and I appreciate their contribution to music. But like if you ask me to pick my favorite bands of all time, I mean they certainly wouldn't be on the top 10, and I don't even know that they'd be in the top 20. You know,
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah, and that's where I'm at. But listen, let's get back to Sheryl Crow because,
yes.
and I don't know because I haven't gone through Heather's spreadsheet nor have I gone through this entire list to see. I'm assuming that this is the only album from Sheryl Crow that's going to pop up on this list.
I would
Um,
assume so, just because of the titles that are on it. Like I can't see another record coming in higher than the album with "If It Makes You Happy" and stuff like that.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, and you know, honestly, I think the only other record that people would even consider might be, I think it's called Tuesday Night Music Club, like her debut before she released this one,
Because this is
because that
not her
has
debut.
Las Vegas.
Yeah, this is not her debut.
No, it's
Yeah,
not. It's not.
gotcha.
But but listen, as it stands, to me, this album to me represents the best of everything that Sheryl Crow can do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. And for me, this was actually kind of a surprise because I mean I knew a couple Sheryl Crow songs, but again, this was I was 5 years old when this record came out. This was a little bit before my time, and this must have just been some weird little gap in my knowledge. But when I think Sheryl Crow, I thought country, and this record is not country at all. I mean, there's maybe some like little influences of country, but this is like a '90s rock record, almost
Yeah.
like bordering on alternative rock. You know,
Okay. I was gonna say it's almost like an alt country record.
but I don't even know if I get a whole lot of country from it. I mean, it's pop. Like I think it's more pop than country to me. But that maybe I'm wrong.
I think that a little bit of country comes through in Home. I think a little bit of country comes through in Sweet Rosalind. Redemption Day is definitely like
Redemption Day is probably the most country, I would say,
yeah.
with the banjo.
Yeah, which is ironic because she released years later that I found because again I listened to this album multiple times even this week just because I forgot how much I really really loved this album.
Yeah.
He ended up doing like a weird Redemption Day remix I think in 2012 or 2014 where she took outtakes from a Johnny Cash recording session and it sounded like Johnny Cash from the Black Album where he covered Rusty Cage and Hurt by Nine Inch Nails.
Yeah.
And she morphed like this new version of Redemption Day where it's part her and then part Johnny Cash, like a duet. And it's really cool.
Wow. I'll have to check that one out for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, like
You dug,
I don't know that I even knew a change would do you good. That's a great tune. I listened to that one probably like 5 times this week. Um, Let me think about my other highlights on this one. Sweet Rosalind Sweet Rosalind
yep.
was a really nice song. I thought it was the album was paced pretty well. there were times where I thought maybe these songs are a little long. Did you ever get that, or is that just me?
No,
Yeah.
no.
Because they were long. I mean, some of them were like, a lot of them were 5 minutes, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
Which I'm like, if
No,
this is
this.
going to be pop, 3 minutes. you know?
If it's gonna be a radio hit, it ain't gonna be over 3 minutes.
Right.
No, that's funny. So, okay, so you were familiar with "If It Makes You Happy," obviously.
And every
but,
day is a winding road.
Okay, so that's what I was gonna ask, because most people that weren't 5 when this album came out were familiar with "A Change Will Do You Good," "If It Makes You Happy," and then "Every Day Is a Winding Road." And I almost think that "Every Day Is a Winding Road" is probably the most popular song on this album, at least.
Either that or "If It Makes You Happy." Yeah.
Yeah. But to me, the real standouts, like my favorite tracks, I forgot how just insanely beautiful "Home" is, and some of the notes that I made is that her voice is just perfect.
Yes.
And it just works, you know. And that was one of the albums, not to jump too far to the end, but that was one of the tracks that I would love to hear that track on vinyl. Like, really, really would love.
I actually wrote down that the "Home" kind of almost reminded me of a Wilco a little bit. Do you hear that at all?
Well, yes. No, I hear it 100%, and that's why I almost think the most apt description of this album is alt country, because alt country was the tag that they threw on basically everything Wilco before Yankee Hotel Foxtrot, because they didn't know what the hell else to call it.
Did you ever listen to so Jeff Tweedy, he did an album with his son. Did you ever listen to that?
No, I didn't, because it got a little bit late in the catalog for me. And I love Jeff Tweedy and I love Wilco, but I'm gonna stick with everything, let's say, pre-Star Wars, which I think came out in 2016.
But there's a song, Tweedy. I think it was called Tweedy was the name of the project, but it was him and his son. And there's a song on there that reminds me a lot of this "Home" song. So I was thinking either Wilco or Tweedy's side project, but that was kind of cool. That was definitely a really cool song. What do you think of the thematic? Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna talk about the thematic material of that song, which was basically like she was a heartbreaker, and she was. I wrote down a lyric. I'd like to watch the sun come up in a stranger's arms, and she's just basically talking about how she's dissatisfied with who she settled with, essentially.
With her man.
Yeah, it's kind of a bummer for that dude.
I can't lie whenever I say that this entire album, to me, there are so many points in time where her voice is so sexy to me. And listen, whatever, it is what it is. There's a certain quality, a certain vulnerability to her, to the tone that she has across this entire record that
I agree with you.
Tell me this though, deeper into the album, "Love Is a Good Thing" is the title of the track.
Yeah.
That howl that she does towards the end of that track.
I wrote down, was that her?
Yes. I mean, that's it, right?
Yeah. I mean, that was pretty wild for sure.
Yeah.
That was a cool tune for sure. I wrote down this could be a Dave Matthews Band song on "Love Is a Good Thing." But then that howl came in, and that was definitely wild.
And the funny part was I was listening to that, and again, I have a ton of experience with this record. I listened to a lot, and it took me by surprise. And I'm sure that the first time I heard it, it was really surprising to me, but as soon as I heard it, I was just like, yes.
Yeah.
My note was that howl / screech, it for the win, because that's what it felt like.
For sure, yeah. Another highlight for me was "Oh Marie." It almost reminded me of the Beatles. Specifically, like the chorus reminded, like I kept hearing the song "Because," by the Beatles.
Okay.
Yeah. Especially.
I see how
yeah, on just the chorus, like it sounded like kind of like an alt rock version of the Beatles is kind of what I wrote down there. Um, but the guitars were great throughout the record. That was, if anything, was country to me. It was the guitars, but it was more blues rock influenced guitars, and like Americana kind of thing. But just the overdrive on the guitars was nice. I feel like a lot of like overdriven guitars from the '90s, sometimes they can sound either like overdone or underdone. But this didn't. This sounded, right where I wanted it for the songs.
It was a
100%.
good balance. It was a good
Yeah.
balance from the tone that you get from that period of time. I'm
Yeah.
with you.
So yeah, I was definitely surprised. Like I would listen to this one again, and it was not what I expected. I expected a straight up country record for some reason. I think that's just a weird gap in my knowledge, though. I thought of, is that a thing, like Sheryl Crow being country, or did
I
I
mean,
just make that up in my mind?
I feel like some of the later efforts that she's done have definitely been. I think that they probably tilt country, if you will. Um, but but no, her early albums. I think that the alt label was probably the most. I think that was probably the most appropriate one. I mean, obviously, listen. This was already in my digital collection, and it actually made me want to go out and hunt a little bit for this album on vinyl, because this teleports me back to a very specific point in time in my life, which to me that's the hallmark of great music, is it takes you to places or it helps you get the hell out of places,
Yeah.
depending on if those things are good or bad. And yeah, I'm all in. I love this album. I would probably even move it up on the list. And that can be an unpopular, terrible opinion, but it's okay. That's mine. I'll live it.
So I can see it going on the list because of the influence that it probably had. Um, but and I'm not going to say it shouldn't be on the list, but I'm probably not going to add it to my digital library. And maybe it's just a situation for me where, since I wasn't listening to it when it came out, um, and it doesn't have that nostalgia factor for me. Maybe it's just, and I'm not saying that's the only reason why you feel that way at all, but that definitely adds to it for me if like I have a nostalgia factor on a record,
Yeah.
you know.
No,
Um,
listen, and that's a huge component for me,
So yeah,
right? Is
so I
that
wrote. So
okay.
yeah, I'm not gonna take it off the list in my opinion, but I don't know that I'm gonna add it to my digital library, and I'm probably not gonna look for it on vinyl. But I appreciate it, and I was very surprised by it, and I dig it for sure. So,
Nice, nice.
you wanna move on?
The next one is it's an adventure. All right, so 474 from 1972, the artist Big Star. The title of the album is Number One Record, because
It pretty
I'm
much
sure that
says it all.
yeah, I'm sure that that's what they were shooting for. They were like, "What should we call this, Bob?" Well, let's just call it Number One Record.
Number one
All right,
record.
there's nobody fucking named Bob in the band. I'm super sorry. Rolling Stone says Alex Chilton and Chris Bell were the Memphis whiz kids at the heart of Big Star. They mixed British invasion pop finesse with all-American hard rock, from the surging Feel to the acoustic Heartbreaker 13. Big Star didn't sell many records. What the fuck? All right, Big Star didn't sell many records, but did become a crucial inspiration to underdogs like R.E.M., The Replacements, and Elliott Smith. As Chilton said later, quote, "If you only press up 100 copies of a record, then eventually it will find its way to the 100 people in the world who want it most," end quote.
I hope
JB.
that last. I hope that last thing is true, because that's how many copies that I made of my record.
I almost feel like if they really pressed 100, I don't know, maybe they were really shooting for the stars when they pressed 100 of them.
Yeah, right.
Did anything stand out to you on this?
Yeah, the elephant in the room, which is that '70s show theme song, right?
No! Did you know that was a fucking thing?
So I didn't remember it, but I remember years ago looking up like who wrote that, because I was like, is that just like something that was written for the show, or is that a song that they took? And it's a little bit of both, because they changed it. Like it's not
Yeah.
like the song is different. And I remember reading that it was some band called Big Star, which I didn't even remember the name of the band. So that tells you how much how much of an impact it had. But so yeah, Yeah, the third track on this record is called "In the Street," and it was appropriated as the theme song to that '70s show. And they added a little bit, and they took out some things. So they took out a key change. And that's a great song. I do love that song. You know, what did you think of that song?
Listen, I didn't. Okay, so I never went down that rabbit hole in my life of is this a song or is this not a song? And so when that song came on, I was like, what the fuck? Actually, I wrote LOL because I did just start laughing out loud with my headphones on, and I was like, that '70s show. Didn't know that that was a thing, and I mean, listen, this is another one of those albums that I don't get it.
You don't get it. Is it the voice?
Um. Well, all right. Listen. So next, okay, listen. I'm just gonna read random notes from different songs. Ballad of El Goodo, which yes, that's the name of the song. Ballad of El Goodo.
That was one of my favorite ones.
I don't know. Seriously?
Yeah,
That's
I'm
what
serious. Oh,
now. No, but that's what I mean. Like this didn't. Well, actually, let's turn this around. What did you hear in this that made you think I understand why this is on this list?
so I'm thinking this record had to, like, and they talked about it in the description. It had to be a big influencer. There has to have been artists that said that Big Star influenced them because simply because I've never heard of them, you know, and I don't know anybody that says Big Star is my favorite band, you know. So, like, for them to show up on this list was surprising for me. It's surprising for me to see anyone that I don't know, but maybe I'm overestimating my musical knowledge. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
when this is like the best albums of all time, and I see a band like, who the fuck is Big Star? Like, you know. Um, but I
Yeah.
mean, I liked it. I think that the reason it's on the list is, like I said, the influence, and it's just like a snapshot of like '70s power rock and power pop. You know, it just like this album just sounds like the '70s. It feels. I wrote down that it seems like any of these songs would fit right in on the soundtrack of Dazed and Confused.
Oh,
You
really?
don't think so?
I mean, maybe. I mean, maybe to a listen. The in the street makes sense, you know.
Yeah.
And there's another album that we're going to talk about later today that I kind of feel the same way about. In that, what you just described was this album captures a specific sound from a period of time,
Yeah.
and there's one or two great songs on this album.
Yeah. And for me, um, there were definitely some good highlights. Like the background vocals on this record are absolutely insane. I don't know if you paid a lot of attention to that, but like just throughout, it was just like you could tell they really put some time and effort into the backing vocals. I mean, they're just it's just layers of it. There's a
Well,
lot.
okay, so that's what I was just getting ready to ask you though. Is that are those background vocals, or is that just a ton of tracks being laid down on top of each? It's almost like a wall of sound, but with vocals, right?
Yeah, but I liked it, whatever it was. You know? I really actually liked the voice of the lead vocalist. For some reason, his voice, and I don't know if it's maybe the fact that he sings the theme song to that '70s show, but his voice sounds very '70s to me, whatever that means. You know?
No, listen, I hear that too, and everything that you said when you talked about this being very um, descriptive of a spot in time. I agree with you 100%, right? Like this it has that sound of kind of early 70s kind of pre-arena rock, but arena rock, if
Yeah.
you will.
Yeah.
I don't think that that was really a thing in 1972, arena
Probably
rock.
not. Yeah, probably not. It was like maybe getting to be a thing at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's definitely what this is. And I don't want to be too shitty about it. I mean, there was definitely things that I appreciated, especially towards the end of the album. The end of the album, correct me if I'm wrong, but like the last 3 songs on this album, it's almost a suite, right? Like these, like the last 3 or maybe even 4 songs of the album kind of run together in the same way that the end of Abbey Road runs together with the Beatles.
Yeah, you mean like the transitions between the songs?
Yes,
Yeah.
where there's no hard track break or anything, and it almost feels like every song is connected the way that, similarly to the way the jam bands connect songs, like they just kind of flow one into the other. And I'm thinking about what is it? At the end of Abbey Road, it's The Wait followed by
I hate that I don't know the answer.
yeah. No, I know. The last 3 songs of Abbey Road, they're a suite where all of the songs run together, and I'm
Yeah.
drawn to.
But I know what you're saying though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what it felt like to me. The end of this record did.
Yeah, and just so I think it's and I mean this was 1972, but it's so difficult to have a unique sound and to be a band that, like, when you hear them, it's that band. I mean, how many bands do you know of that you could just identify right away based on their sound if you didn't know the song? And by the end of this record, I felt like there was a Big Star sound and that I would recognize them again if I heard a song that I didn't know by then.
And that's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fair. And I don't think that it's wrong either. I mean, it is what it is. By the way, I was so embarrassed about this. Golden Slumbers, and to carry that weight into the end.
Oh, did you look that up? Yeah.
I had to look that up because I didn't want to just get 60 fucking emails from people being like, "You assholes, how did you not know the trilogy at the end of Abbey Road?" But
if those guys do want to tell us that, we should put our email address out there.
Listen, if you want to call us assholes and tell us how stupid we are, we actually love that type of stuff. And so you can send us an email at thislistsucks@gmail.com, or you can go to the podcast homepage, which is at anchor.fm/thislistsucks, and you can leave us terrible voice memos, or you can send us messages there too. So we encourage you to do that, as well as checking out the Facebook page, checking out the Insta feed, and starting this week, checking out the
YouTube channel.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. I was like, what are they checking out this week? But yeah, did this record remind you of anyone at all?
No.
Like, it's pretty unique, right? They have a sound,
yeah.
I would say.
Yeah.
If anything, I heard a little bit of, and you might say I'm crazy on this, but I heard like a Southern rock influenced Elton John. A little tiny bit of it, like especially some like early Elton John. In terms of the songwriting, but definitely more Southern rock bluesy. Are you laughing because you agree?
I mean, probably not. No.
That's okay.
No, probably not. I mean, listen, this is okay, right? This is okay because I feel like I'm not going to get there on this record.
That's okay. Yeah.
And for the record, I'm not hunting for this on vinyl. I didn't smash the add button to put it into my digital collection. I'm glad that I heard it. It's not unlistenable by any stretch of the imagination. I think that there's stuff that is worthwhile on here, but considering the albums, and hopefully we'll get to this later on down the line in like a mini episode, considering the albums that JB and I have recently discovered have been completely left off this album, Big Star can find a big dick to suck, in my opinion. Sorry.
Yeah. I did add it to my digital library. But I'm not going to seek it out on vinyl. And I don't know about it being on the list. It's a hard decision for me because, like I said, it does like capture the 70s sound for me. And I can, it obviously was a big influence on a lot of musicians, but I just don't know about it being on this list. Like, I've never heard of them. Like, how could it possibly be one of the, and I'm not saying me, but I'm saying I bet if I asked 20 people, most I would say that 19 of them wouldn't have even heard of this band, you know. And it goes to like, how do you define the term greatest, you know? Like, I feel like most people should know a lot of this stuff if it's going to be on this list.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And even the description that Rolling Stone puts on here, right? They say right off the bat, like, Rolling Stone, Big Star didn't sell many records, but did become inspiration. And so, you know, listen, respect to REM, respect to the Replacements, and finding these guys and taking what they added to music and putting it into their own stuff. But yeah, for me, I'm good.
Yeah, but I would say, you know, if you haven't heard of Big Star, check out the record.
It's worth checking out. It's not worth putting on this list.
Okay, moving on to one that Mike most certainly will think belongs on this list. This is probably Mike's favorite record of the week, I would say. Word on the street. All right, so coming in at 473, we have Daddy Yankee's Barrio Fino. Do you know if I'm saying that right?
Barrio Fino.
So no. Could have said. Okay, as Rolling Stone describes it, just when Latin pop radio was hitting a ballad-heavy plateau, Puerto Rican MC Daddy Yankee set the industry aflame with his 2004 reggaeton, also might not be saying that correct, reggaeton opus Barrio Fino. Crowned by the hydraulic bounce of Yankee's first international hit, Gasolina, the record marked a colossal breakthrough, not just for the rapper himself, but for the entire genre known as reggaeton, a raw blend of hip-hop and reggae, born in the mean streets of San Juan. So how much did you love this one?
I'm really hoping that that all of the contributors and everything to this list were like, reggaeton means so much to us that we've got to make sure that it's represented on the list. Who's the best person to represent that? It's got to be Daddy Yankee.
Fucking Yankee.
Plug Daddy Yankee in, and away we go.
Yeah. God. This was a long record, too, wasn't it?
It was. I mean, listen. This is what I'll say. Yes, it was a very, very long record. And again, considering how much I loved Soweto, right, which was way back in the first 5 records that we did, and that was representative of world music, I do support having all kinds of different genres of music represented. And even though all of this album was in Spanish, what I tried to focus on, because the lyrics, the lyrics didn't make sense to me because I don't speak Spanish fluently by any stretch of the imagination. I can pick out words here and there. But what I did try to do, because when I think about what makes a rapper really, really great, it's their ability to flow, right? It's their ability to make their voice into an instrument that's also lyrically giving you something to digest and something to think about. So that whole second half of that statement that I just made, lyrically give you something to digest and think about. I couldn't do that, to think about it and digest it. So what I did try and do was just think about how well can this guy rhyme?
Yeah.
Right. And even though it was in Spanish and I didn't necessarily understand all the words, only a handful of them, I thought that he was really talented, right? And the beats were very Nintendo, like OG Nintendo on the beats,
yeah,
right?
Pretty not sophisticated. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like you were talking about the fact that, maybe a lot of different types of music need represented. And I agree with that to some extent, but not to the extent that like every single genre of music needs represented and we have to pick one band from every genre. I mean, and for this, like, I don't even know if I can wrap my head around this genre. Like, I didn't hear a lot of reggae. Did you?
No.
It says it's a blend of reggae and hip hop. I heard hip hop, and that's mainly it.
Yeah, and I don't even know how much of what I heard is what I would call like I mean, it's probably not hip hop that I'm the biggest fan of necessarily, and I like hip hop. Like I like a lot of different hip hop, but this didn't necessarily scratch that itch. But I did, while I was listening to this, I did do some digging. Do you realize that this was the best-selling Latin album of the decade from 2000 to 2010?
Yes, I did read that, and that's kind of crazy.
Fucking nuts, dude.
Yeah. The whole thing seemed pretty one-dimensional to me.
It was.
Like, every song, like, I don't want to just put it all out there right away because I was going to kind of build up to this, but they all sounded the same to me, like almost exactly, you know? Like I could barely even tell when it had changed songs. And I actually took notes on each individual song, which was kind of a painstaking process here, you know, because there were 21 songs on this.
You and I have a very similar style about how we're approaching this, right? So that we can actually present reasonable information to, you know, to the people that are kind enough to listen to this. And I couldn't do that, dude. I tried.
Yeah.
I made it through 3 songs, and then I was like, all right, stop.
Somehow I did it. I did the whole thing. And one thing I noticed, which I can't really, maybe there's something that I missed, but he said this probably 5 or 6 songs, he would just randomly go, Looney Tunes. Did you catch that? He kept randomly saying Looney Tunes. Like enough that I wrote it down like 6 times. Why?
Listen, I'm going to start off by saying that I did not pick up on the multitude of Looney Tunes
I'm surprised.
references.
It was pervasive.
I believe you. Do you realize that Daddy Yankee sang in a very, very popular song that was incredibly popular, like, not that long ago?
Despacito.
JB, you and I must visit the same Wikipedia page.
Yeah, because I don't think I knew that just from knowing the song.
No, there's no way. Listen, I don't know. I mean, I don't know where to go with this one outside of, if you're the #1 selling Latin album across an entire decade,
it's a big deal. But
you've spoken to a lot of people in a way that connected.
Yeah,
right?
I guess. Yeah, and maybe I just have to accept the fact that I'm probably not like the target audience for this record. You know, this is not my style of music, and that's okay. And that's probably going to be the case for a lot of these records. He did have a hand.
Yankee not writing lyrics to try and impress a bearded white guy in Iowa.
The nerve. But so he did himself have a hand in writing every one of these songs. So there's something to be said for that, and he's the executive producer, which is cool. But yeah, just going back to, they just sound all the same to me. And like, there were a couple songs where, like, I was picturing an exchange that was happening in the studio, where whoever was, you know, behind the board was like, "But Daddy Yankee, how are we gonna make this one sound different than all the others?" And Daddy Yankee was like, "Gun sounds." You know what I mean? Because there was one song where it was just inexplicable, like cocking of a gun going on all throughout, and then another one was like, "Yeah, we're gonna put a helicopter on this one for no reason at all." Maybe it has something to do with the lyrics. I don't know because I don't speak Spanish, but you know, and that was really the only difference.
So sorry. Oh man. Yeah. I mean, I just.
Did you read about him getting shot?
I don't know that I made it that deep into Wikipedia. I don't think I did, to be perfectly honest with you.
So he was like apparently a pretty legit baseball player, I guess.
Oh fuck! Yeah. Yes. Go,
and
please.
He was gonna be like a career baseball player, and he was kind of doing music on the side, and then he got shot, like by an AK-47, and and then it pretty much, he was laid up for like a year and a half recovering from that injury, which he accredits that to allowing him to focus full time on music. So without him getting shot, we wouldn't have Barrio Fino. So
and it wouldn't be number 473. Okay, so yeah, listen, not to take words out of your mouth. Neither one of us added this to our library.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for it on vinyl. I can't imagine that you are. What do you think about it? What do you think about it being on the list, though? And
well, see, I was
gonna
say take it off the list, but then when you said that a record that is the number one selling Latino album for a whole decade, like, I feel like it's probably warranted being on the list. And just because I need to take a step back and realize that, although again, this is our opinion, right? That's what this whole thing is. So, but I mean, it probably has a place on the list if it meant that much to that many people,
Yeah.
Or we could say, fuck those people, take it off the list.
I mean, listen, I'm not. And again, I don't want to spoil anything that we end up doing later. It has come to our attention that there are some glaring, like, artists that have just been not represented on this list. And so when I think about what I know not being on the list, it's hard for me to say, well, of course he needs to be here. But at the same time, listen, I do think that when you're trying to compile a greatest of list like this, you need to be willing to sacrifice. You need to be willing to sacrifice some things in the name of inclusion.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel like Selena was like for last week. And if I'm going to be okay with Amor Prohibido being on this list, then I feel like I need to be willing to accept Barrio Fino. Now, if Barrio Fino would have made an appearance at 97, yeah, this would be way more of a profanity-laced tirade of do away with this entirely. But, at 473, even with everything that's been left off the list that we'll talk about later that I know and that I just can't believe is not on the list, I'm actually okay. And again, most of that comes back to this is the best-selling Latin record of the decade.
Which is a big deal, yeah.
It's a big deal.
I think personally, though, I actually did enjoy the Selena album more.
Oh, I did too.
Yeah.
I did too.
I would rather listen to that one.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
It's just, his voice sounds a lot like Pitbull to me. And I do not like Pitbull at all. So.
Listen, I'm right there with you, but it literally, because I think in that same Wikipedia page they talk about Pitbull, there was some reference that I read when I was digging into this a little bit about Pitbull, and It made me just hope and pray that we don't come across a Pitbull record anywhere on this list.
Well, this list does suck, so, it's a possibility.
That's fucking
If anything has been gleaned from this recording of this podcast so far, it's that this list fucking sucks.
Sucks. Speaking of a sucky list, at number 472, released only a few years ago, so this is another one of these recent additions to the list. At number 472 from 2017, we have SZA's album Control, spelled CRTL. Rolling Stone says, thanks to SZA's lyrics about insecurity, jealousy, loneliness, and her search for lovin' and licky, this absurd debut brought a new self-searching spirit to R&B. The tracks are gentle and erotic, but beneath the singer's soft-grained style, there's fierceness. In Dove in the Wind, she tells a lover she can easily replace him with a dildo. On Love Galore, a duet with Travis Scott that describes an ambivalent breakup, she makes clear the vulnerability beneath the bravado. I have a cat that's trying to walk across me right now. Quote, give me a paper towel, give me another Valium. JB, what did you think about SZA?
So, I listened to this record 2 times, or probably like 2.5 times, but like 2 times all the way through, and there were a couple tracks I revisited. The first time I listened to this, I was super underwhelmed. I didn't dislike it, but I was not stimulated, like, at all. I found it really boring. And that's going to be, like, my overarching opinion on this record in general, I think, is it's just not very exciting. But the second time through, there were some songs I kind of latched onto a little more, and I appreciated it a lot more the second time through. But I just don't know, and this is just a personal preference thing, but if just the real mellow R&B thing is my thing. So for me, it was kind of hard to get into. There were a couple songs I liked a lot, and I did enjoy the little sound bites of. I think some of them were her mom, and I think some of them were her grandma. I'm not
Yeah.
100% sure about that, but I did like that a lot. I thought that kind of humanized her a lot, made her really relatable, which I appreciated. But the lyrics were kind of annoying to me. She was just like super insecure all throughout, which just kind of gets on my nerves after like 4 or 5 songs of that, you know. And like someone needs to tell her her love life does not need to be this complicated, you know. Like I promise, there's an easier way.
Dude, I love this record.
You did?
I mean,
Wow.
really love the record.
I'm
Yeah.
surprised.
But listen, I feel like I should preface this with maybe one of my favorite records of all time. It's probably not going to be on here, but I love the record Portishead.
Yeah.
And this, to me, like the beats that they've employed on this record give me the same feel of like, you call it trance hop, call it trip hop, like whatever you want, whatever moniker you want to throw on that intentionally slowed down version of R&B where you're taking kind of traditional hip hop beats and either putting them into a live acoustic format, right? Meaning you're taking those beats, but you're using live drums, live bass, live guitar to create them, kind of like the Roots are doing on their records,
100%.
or or you've just got like that kind of trance type feel to it, and I mean, obviously, listen, for people that don't know, like JB and I cross paths in multiple different ways in our lives, and one of those ways is also through a book club, and books are the written medium, music is the oral medium, and to me, anything that talks about and celebrates even the worst parts of being a human, I love. And that, like, I really gravitate towards those things, both in print and in music. And that, part of that human experience is insecurity, and it's universal, and everybody feels it. And so to me, like, I loved that she would talk about it almost incessantly. And you could argue
Definitely
that it's the
incessantly.
incessantly that kills you.
Well, and so now you make me feel like a jackass for saying that.
No.
And
Come
so,
on.
and because like when you put it that way, I do agree. Like I don't always find insecurity annoying. Maybe it's just here, you know. So, because like he was referencing a book club, and we've been kind of really into an author called Haruki Murakami lately, and he uh, he writes deeply about insecurity of characters and stuff, and that never annoys me. So I'm thinking
Yeah.
something about this one.
Listen, I don't think that you're an asshole because
At
music
least not
works
for
on a
this
different
reason.
medium. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it really does work on a different medium. But for me, that slowed down tempo of this whole thing, again, that brings me kind of back to a certain place. It creates memories for me that might not, they're not there for you, and that's okay. There's
Well,
nothing
no,
wrong with
cause
that.
but at the same time, I've listened to Portishead, and I like that a lot better. Cause like, I, cause like I think a lot of this was going for like you were talking about that trip hop. Um, I think there were some trap beats. I don't know if I'm even
Yeah.
referring to that correctly. And she's going for like the vibey, mellow instrumental sound. But I feel like you can do that and still have intensity, because intensity doesn't necessarily mean loud or fast. Intensity is a spirit that is like contained within, and I still get that intensity with Portishead, and I don't with here. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
and I'd probably use the word urgency rather than intensity, if that makes sense, because that, like, the word urgency, I think, really works with what Portishead is doing, but there is no urgency here. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
definitely not.
Like,
And a lot of them, and maybe this goes back to me being a musician, which is my downfall a lot of the time in terms of the stuff. But a lot of them were two chord vamps with major seven chords, which is
yeah,
like that's like if you're going for a mellow R&B groove, you do a two chord vamp with a major seven chord. So it's like It just sounded real generic to me and real, you know, just kind of drab, like a lot of the time. But there were some things I liked. I liked Drew Barrymore a lot, actually.
Yeah.
And like we talked about before, I don't. We both prefer to listen to full albums, but I'm not gonna add this one to my list. I'll just say that now. I know we have more to talk about with this one, but I did add that song. I did add Drew Barrymore to my library.
Dude, but that's one of the few songs that she really stretches her vocals out too.
Yeah, on the chorus, the really good chorus. Yeah,
dude,
really catchy.
The hook in that song is really, really, really good.
Like the outside baby part, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yes. Really, really good. Yeah. So that one
now
stuck out.
Yeah, and for me, Moore's, standouts for me. I loved Doves in the Wind. I really did. And part of that is just because she samples a Redman track. And it's not just any Redman track. It's a Redman track for Muddy Waters, which if fucking Muddy Waters from Redman isn't on this list, I should already prepare myself for disappointment. There's no fucking way that album is on here, but it's hands down one of my favorite hip-hop albums of all time. And she samples a track from that, and so that just, it got me all excited to hear Reggie Noble on there.
Yeah,
and she
for sure.
Songwriting credits, which was awesome. So,
and that song had the Kendrick appearance.
Yes, yeah, Kendrick feature in that song. I made note of there's a line about Forrest Gump in that song, which just had me fucking rolling.
I missed it.
Really good. I dug that song a lot. And then
what was the Forrest Gump quote?
I don't know, because I didn't write down the entire line. That was just my note. My note was that the Forrest Gump line is amazing.
Okay.
So I'd have to go back and cite specific lyrics, which I have no problem doing because, and listen, I don't mind you jumping the gun on this because for me, when this album first came out in 2017, I go to a lot of festivals every year. SZA she was either at Bonnaroo or she was at ACL that year that this album came out, and so because I saw her on lineups, I started to give this album a listen. I probably only made it halfway through, and I just got kind of wrapped up in some other shit. And then the schedule for the festival came out. There was conflict, so I knew that I wasn't going to see her, and I just kind of dropped. But this was an album that when it popped back up on this list, I was excited to go back and revisit it because I wasn't unexcited about it the first time that I started to give it a whirl. And I'm glad I went back and listened to it some more. Listen, I love Normal Girls is another track that stood out to me late in the album.
That was another highlight for me, for sure.
Yeah.
Normal Girl. And there was like a really cool guitar melody on that one that stuck out to me.
It was, yeah. I mean, musically, there was cool stuff that was happening in there. In addition to, listen, I love Drew Barrymore too. I love Doves in the Wind. The first half of the album is probably stronger for me than the back half of the album. Like the second track on there, Love Galore, I made a note that it reminded me a lot of Billie Eilish. Not necessarily vocally, probably more sound, because I think Billie Eilish has a lot of that kind of trip hop sound.
You think we'll see Billie Eilish on this list?
No, I don't think so. I really think that if Billie Eilish was on this list, we would have seen her by now, right?
I don't know, man. I would not be surprised to see her 2019, I think, record.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised to see that on here. And I wouldn't be surprised to see it in above 400.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
We'll see. Maybe I'm crazy. But just remember that I said that. And I haven't looked it up. So I'm not like...
I believe you. Listen, I think both of us have done a pretty good job. I mean, listen, I'll cheat and I might look ahead 1 or 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything... I've never seen anything north of 450.
Me neither. So don't send us spoilers.
Don't send us spoilers. But listen, I added this album. I'm not going to look for it on vinyl because I don't think that an improved soundstage would do anything for me, that I couldn't get by just hitting play.
Yeah, this is more of a headphone album, I would say. But like I said, I added Drew Barrymore, but that's about it. And as much as I hate to pick pieces of the album apart, that's going to be the only one I really care to revisit, at least on any kind of regular basis. But I did
Yeah.
dig that one enough to listen to it. There were some really cool beats in it. The production was good. The synth work was pretty cool. Um, there was kind of a theme of like this fluttery treble like synth like kind of sound going on that I liked a lot. That was super cool, and it was often paired with like another really bassy low synth. And there
Mhm.
were some songs where they used analog drums. Like I think the opening song was like an actual drum set.
I think there's actually more than that we're using analog drums.
I believe it, yeah. But there were
I,
definitely some that didn't.
well, yeah, there were definitely some that didn't, but I mean, if I'm thinking about, I mean, I think there were 14 tracks on this album. I would not feel uncomfortable at all saying that I think the majority of those tracks, like at least 8 out of the 14, were using analog kits and analog instrumentation.
Hmm. Yeah, you could be right. I'm not 100% sure on that. Say it again. Cut out for a second.
No, I was just going to ask if you thought that was too high.
I don't really remember as far as the drums. I think there was definitely. Um, I remember hearing some actual bass, but I also remember hearing a lot of synth bass, or what I took as synth bass. But you can do a lot of shit in the studio, so there's really no way to say for sure, like whether that was an actual bass or not.
Yeah, and I didn't write down the guy's name, but first and foremost, like she has songwriting credits on every single one of these things.
Yeah,
So
that's
Cooper,
apparently she was like almost paralyzed about the release of this record. Did you read something about that?
no, I didn't go.
Yeah, so she finished this record, and she spent like a year or two doing revisions on it, and like she says she was paralyzed by the anxiety of the thought of releasing it, and the record company literally took away her computer hard drive because she just would not stop making revisions and changes, and so at some point the record company took her hard drive from her, and they released it. So,
Well, I mean, listen, good for the label for doing it. It's listen, I really like it. Right, I really like it. I think it's really good, and
yeah.
yeah, I'm okay with keeping it.
Yeah,
I am.
I don't really get why you're okay with keeping it on the list. I mean, because I
Actually,
understand
listen,
adding it.
knowing, I mean, no, I'm actually not.
Yeah,
You know,
because I'm
I'm
not
gonna
either.
and I'm gonna say no. I mean, I appreciate what she did, and again, I really like the album. Like, I'll listen to it. I'll listen to it again, probably multiple times in the future. But just in terms of being the greatest 500 albums of all time, knowing what I know about what's not on this list, no, I can't keep it on this list.
Yeah, and even not knowing, like, it just seems like a weird call to put this one on the list. Like for what reason? Like, was it? It obviously wasn't heavily influential.
No,
So the argument is just the content of it is that good that it belongs on this list. Which, when I think of this type of music, like there's several things I would rather put on the list. And
yeah,
I can't get there at all. I'm nowhere near putting this record on the list, and I'm not even talking shit about the record itself. Like I've made it clear how I feel. I think it's a little boring, but I don't dislike it. But I'm
yeah.
nowhere near putting this on the list.
Well, and even thinking back to the very first five, Rufus.
Yeah, yeah. He just drove it home.
Yeah,
So
just when you think about like what Shaka Khan did on that album and what all of those instrumentalists did on that album relative to this, yeah, it becomes a really tough argument.
this is the first like one where I've honestly been confused. Like I feel like a lot of the other ones like I didn't agree with, but I could understand why a group of people would decide to put this one on the or put one on the list. But this one, I'm just like, where did this come from? Like why did any group of people come to the conclusion that this is one of the greatest albums of all time? And I'm not trying to be harsh because, like I said, I kind of came around on the record the second listen, but like the greatest of all time, I'm nowhere near there. So
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I mean, you've got me.
Yeah.
I agree. And again, not to say that it's not worth listening to. There's definitely stuff worth listening to on this record, but
Yeah,
um,
go absolutely go listen to it. I would recommend it even. Um, especially if you're into hip hop and if you're into something mellow and vibey, go check it
yeah,
out. But
yeah. But other fuck off on this list.
yeah, should we do the last one?
Do it, man.
Okay, coming in at number 471. Shockingly late or early in the list, I guess rather. Jefferson Airplane's Surrealistic Pillow from 1967. Psychedelic scholars have long tried to pin down just what the Grateful Dead's Jerry Garcia did on this album, besides contribute some guitar playing, to earn a credit as spiritual advisor. But the real trip is the airplane's hallucinatory distillation of folk blues vocals, garage rock guitar, and crisp pop songwriting. Grace Slick's vocal showcases White Rabbit and Somebody to Love made Surrealistic Pillow a commercial smash during San Francisco's Summer of Love, and Marty Ballin's Spectral Today is still the greatest ballad of that city's glory days. So, this was a joy to revisit this one this week.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
If White Rabbit and Somebody to Love is not on this album, is it on this list?
Yes.
Why?
Well, so that's a tricky question to answer because if the album still held the place in history that it did without those songs, then yes, it's on the list. Like, because, I mean, this is like a snapshot of the 60s. This is like, other than the Grateful Dead, what band better encompasses the Summer of Love? I mean, except for Jefferson Airplane.
But do you think Axamaxua is on this list?
No.
Axamaxua. How the hell did you say that?
I'm not even gonna try.
Okay.
But
what you talking
about? I think it's Oxamoxa. But yeah. I don't know if it's on the list or not, but you can't put every Grateful Dead record on the list, right?
No, but which one would you rather have? Would you rather have Surrealistic Pillow?
I would rather have Surrealistic Pillow than every Grateful Dead record be on the list. Yeah.
Than every Grateful Dead record?
What?
No, really?
No, maybe that came out wrong. Like, if the option was either have every single Grateful Dead record to collectively be put on the list. I'm not saying this goes above every single Grateful Dead record for me, but I mean, this is like a siren song of a generation, and I think it would go on there. Well, see, that's the question though, is would it have achieved the same level without those songs? I don't know that it would have, but based on the level that it achieved, it belongs on the list.
Okay, so for back in 2003, when this list was first devised.
Yes, I know what you're gonna say.
Yeah, 143 or
Nuts.
no, 146.
That's a serious downgrade.
Yeah, 146 all the way down to 471, and that's why I asked you that first question, because I feel like the only thing that kept this album from completely falling off the list was White Rabbit and Somebody to Love.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend about this actually, because do you think that has anything to do with just simply that it's 15 years later and the contributors there's not as many older contributors?
Yeah.
There probably weren't a lot of people that contributed to making this list that saw Jefferson Airplane live in the 60s. There may have been a couple that contributed to that in the early 2000s. I don't know. But the chance of them being part of the list today are very low, And there's definitely, as we've already seen with Harry Styles and with SZA, there's a lot of new records on this list. But are there 300 new records on this list to move this one 300 pegs down? Probably not. So it's probably just that there's a bias towards newer music, maybe,
I mean, I definitely think that they were trying to include the last 2 decades, right? Trying to give the last 2 decades their due, if you will, in the musical pantheon. But for me, this album works when Grace is the highlight.
Those are definitely the high points of it for me too.
They are. That's when Jefferson Airplane works best when, to me, Jefferson Airplane works best when you have a little bit of vocal support to what Grace is capable of doing, and then instrumentally give her whatever she needs. Right?
Yeah, but
and that's what Somebody to Love is. That's what White Rabbit is. The one thing that you can make the argument against that is Today, because Today is spectacularly beautiful. I mean, it's just a really, really, it's a wonderful song. I mean, a really, really wonderful
what
song.
about Plastic Fantastic Lover?
Um,
I fucking love that song. And I
yeah.
think it's actually pretty interesting. Like, it's a 1-4-5.
Yep.
But it's done in a really interesting way. Like, in a way that feels fresh. I love that fucking song. And I don't even know if she's even on that song, you know?
She's not. Lyrically, that song is a lot of fun, right? Because lyrically, that song kind of speaks to the future, and it talks about kind of the future. It felt like a Doors track to me, which, again, if you think about 1967 is the self-titled Doors debut.
There were a couple tunes that sounded kind of Doorsy to me. I actually wrote that on the next tune, In the Morning, which is like one of the bluesy ones.
Oh, okay. So listen, full and fair disclosure, I only made notes through Plastic Fantastic Lover. I listened to the rest of the deluxe version of this album, which it basically makes it a double album with a bunch of outtakes and some mono takes of White Rabbit and Somebody to Love. And I think that's what you're talking about, right?
I don't know. I thought In the Morning and JPP MC Step B Blues and Go to Her were on the record. Were they not?
No, so none of those were on the original release of Surrealistic Pillow.
Okay.
The studio release ended with
Plastic
Lover.
Okay, interesting. And I would have known that because I had actually thought about this could have been the first record of the list that I sat down and listened to and took notes listening on vinyl, but I did not do that. I listened on headphones on my phone. Did you do that? Do you have it on vinyl?
No, I don't. No, I don't have this on vinyl. But I listen, and I've been really shitty to this album up to this point in time. But in all fairness, listen, I love this album. I probably love it most because of White Rabbit and Somebody to Love. I mean, those are the stand and Today. Like, those three tracks make this album to me, and if I see it on vinyl, if I can hunt it down on vinyl, I'm gonna buy it because it's to me it's worth owning on vinyl for that downstage.
Yeah. So White Rabbit, Somebody to Love, Today, like you said, but also for me, Plastic Fantastic Lover, My Friend. I fucking love that song, My Friend. I think that's just a great chorus on that, which is the third track.
The harmonies. Harmonies on My Best Friend are they're spectacular.
That song that's just a feel good song to me. It feels like triumphant to an extent, and I think that it could be like that they kind of do this really interesting thing where they go between like a swing feel and a straight feel on that one.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, because the note that I made, and it was a question, is were they changing time signatures?
They're not changing time signatures. They're changing like the emphasis. They're going to like a straight eighth note feel from like a syncopated swing feel. But it's like the same. I think it's the same tempo. I mean, at least very close. And the same. It's all just 4/4. But they go from a swing to a straight feel, and it's like that's not an easy thing to do in a live setting, you know. So
no, and it's the effect that it gives the track is phenomenal.
Yeah. Definitely. And even just from the very first song, I could hear Jerry Garcia's influence. Like, She Has Funny Cars. The guitars, like, that might have been one of the songs where Jerry played guitar on. Because that sounded like Jerry to me. That sounded like super early Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It sounded like, which I guess is when this would have been. It sounded like Axa, or it sounded like even earlier than that, you know? But
the arrangements to me, and I did a little bit of digging on that too, just because there's a lot of lore around that whole idea of spiritual advisor
And because we
with
talked
Jerry.
about that last week, remember that?
Yeah.
Outside of the podcast, what did you find out in your digging?
That most of what Jerry did was there was guitar work here and there, and most of the guitar work that I found that Jerry did was on the bonus tracks. That if you listen to like the deluxe edition, a lot of him appears on the bonus tracks. But what everybody routinely says is that the arrangements of all of the original tracks, like the first whatever the hell it is, the first 10 tracks or whatever, the original release of Surrealistic Pillow, the arrangements of almost all of them were touched by Jerry.
Yeah.
And that I think you can hear.
And I think I might have even said that last week, but because yeah, like in terms of like the song structure arrangements, like let's put a verse and then a chorus and then a guitar solo here or whatever. I think that was kind of what he did as spiritual advisor. You know, he wasn't quite a producer, but I mean,
no,
almost. Like that's
close.
that's what a producer does. Is to make recommendations about the formats of songs and, you know, depending on the type of music, you know, get more involved with the studio work. But there's a difference between an engineer and a producer. You know, like a producer a lot of the time would do those kinds of things. So it's almost like they just use that word instead of producer, really.
Well, and I'm sure that there was a tremendous amount of LSD that was ingested, and I have no doubt that Jerry was influential in that aspect of what Jefferson Airplane was doing.
Oh yeah, 100%, I'm sure. But for me, this is the first record on the list that I already own on vinyl.
You do?
Yeah, 100%.
You own a classic version of it, or is it like a reissue?
No, it's an old one. It's an old one.
You motherfucker.
We should listen to it next week after we're able to get together again for the podcast, maybe.
Yes. No, absolutely. Celebrate with some OG Jefferson Airplane.
Yeah.
By the way, when we do it over here, I have some OG original issue Working Man's Dead that we'll have to break out whenever that appears on the list too.
Sounds great. I look forward to that. But yeah, this one. Go ahead.
Can we just circle back around, because I'm curious. 146 to 471. And there's a part of me that I think 471 is too far. I do want to keep this on here, even though I still feel like the sound is only on here because of White Rabbit and Somebody to Love. I'm comfortable with that. Like I'm cool. I still want to leave this on here because I do think that it captures a very specific point in history that's really important to history, and I think that that's kind of a little bit about what you spoke to with that sound, especially for the Summer of Love. So I'm okay with keeping it on here, but I'm also okay with it not being at 146. Like, I think 146 is it's really tall for what this record does.
I think it needs to be above 300, I would say. I think this is too low. It's almost a snub. You know?
I mean, it's borderline, right? I mean, it's certainly kind of ranging into snub category, just considering how iconic, you know, the big songs on this record are. But at the same time,
I mean, Somebody to Love, like, I wrote down, like, what am I even going to say of value about a song like Somebody to Love? You know? Like, that's such an impactful song that literally transports you to a different decade, you know, and like sums up a generation. So like
it's a time machine.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly. Similar to how the guitar on the Stooges record was for you, you know?
Yes. No. And listen, Somebody to Love works that way for me too. And even today, right? And you can go from 1967 all the way through to today. The number of songs that you're going to be able to find for me that build the way that White Rabbit does.
Yeah. Oh, God. That feeling that you get when she comes in with that final chorus after the bridge, you know? Remember. Dude, it's just like...
Feed your head, man.
Feed your head, yeah.
Feed your head. I mean, it's... Again, I don't know that you can heap enough praise on the really important tracks on this record. I don't think that you can do enough to stress how magical and how wonderful they are.
Yeah.
That you can justify dropping this out of the top 200, and I'm okay with 200 to 300, somewhere in that range. I don't know that it needs to go all the way down to 471, but I want to see what 450 to 400 look like as well. Like I want to hold back my opinion, but at the same time, listen, Juvenile, you can back that ass up all you want, but fuck off. Like, but put Jefferson Airplane in front of Juvenile, right? But still, yeah, I think I'm with you. I'm probably north of 300, but I don't know that I would want to see it above 200, just because I think once you get away from the big tracks on this record, it becomes less impactful for me.
I understand that. Yeah, 100%. But yeah, so for me, it's obviously staying on the list, and I'm not even going to add it to my digital library just because I have it on vinyl, so I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you on the record. So it's already part of my digital collection. Now I feel like I'm way behind the times. I need to find this on vinyl, preferably a good old classic version of it. And yeah, I'm definitely keeping it on the list. And I'm going to move it up on the list too.
Yeah, like the version that I have on vinyl, it's definitely old. I don't know how old it is, but when I bought it, like it doesn't even have a sleeve. It's just the record inside of the cardboard box. And that was the best one I was able to find, but I knew I wanted to get like not a new reissue of it,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I would be the same way. Even if it was kind of trashy and a little bit junky, I'd probably take a previous issue rather than a brand new reissue of it.
Yep. So, should we preview what's coming up next week?
Yeah, I was just gonna say. So if you want to play along at home, next week coming up, we're gonna do 470 through 466, and so the first album that we're gonna talk about is from 1998. It is the album 400 Degrees by Juvenile.
And then 469 is, oh god,
I'm so sorry.
Manu Chao. Is that right at all?
Yeah, we'll call it Manu Chao.
Clandestino.
468, we were just talking about him earlier, the Rolling Stones from 1978, the album Some Girls we're going to talk about.
Our first Stones record. I wonder how many we're going to see. I bet it's at least 5.
Yeah, I think it's more than that.
You think so? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's more than that.
Coming in at 467 is Maxwell, Black Summer's Night. I'm not really familiar with that.
Dude, no clue on that. That was from 2009, so relatively contemporary.
Yeah. Okay.
Interesting. The last album that we'll talk about next week is going to be 466. Again, first appearances. This is the first appearance by the Beach Boys. The name of the album, The Beach Boys Today.
Yeah.
So, I don't. I would like to give a shout out to Rex. Rex, listen, appreciate you sending in the emails. But the albums that you reviewed are actually the albums that we're going to be talking about next week. So I'm going to keep that in my back pocket.
And they're actually 2 weeks away, right? The ones that he sent, I think.
Oh, dude, you're 100% right.
He's 2 weeks ahead of the curve.
Yeah, Rex. Listen, Rex. You got to slow your roll. You're weeks ahead of yourself. But that's okay. Listen, go back and do Juvenile through the Beach Boys, and we'll give you some shout outs on next week. Thank you to everybody that has sent information in, because we're definitely going to tap into some of the stuff that Linda and Lee have sent in to us in some future mini episodes, and also just to give people a preview about what we're going to do. You're not just going to have to listen to me and JB in the future. We're going to bring in we're going to start bringing in some guests into the podcast. That way we can get some additional alternative perspectives. And we're getting dangerously close. We wanted to put a fire line out there. That way everybody could kind of understand at least who we were a little bit. But as we work into, 470 through 450, we're getting closer and closer to the point where we're going to introduce some more folks into this party.
Definitely, yeah. And we talked about, maybe like 20 episodes, and then we're going to do a little offshoot and do a different list. And then we'll definitely, we are committed to finishing this list, so that's happening. But we're going to take some little breaks here and there just to mix it up a little bit. And like we talked about earlier, please go on Facebook and weigh in on our Fiona Apple, Ani DiFranco question. We would love to hear from you on that. We have lots of people already kind of letting their opinion be known on that, and we'll revisit that next week. Um, I know I'm gonna give the Annie DeFranco one another listen, and so
Yeah,
we can talk about it a little more. You know.
yeah, and I'm gonna listen. I'm gonna do both albums at least one more. I'm gonna try and get through both albums 2 more times,
Wow.
and that's a lot of listening outside of what we got to do for the list anyway. But yeah, I'm gonna listen. I'm gonna try and give them a fair shake,
Do you
and I'm gonna
think that the Annie DeFranco record is on this list?
no.
Because I would bet $10, a huge stake of money, that that the Fetch the Bolt Cutters is on the list. Like we
Yes,
talked about
actually,
that.
what? Listen, this would not surprise me. Annie DeFranco, 0 records on the list. Fiona Apple, 3 records on the list.
Yeah, yeah,
That would not.
for sure. We'll see. We'll see. But something to look
Yeah,
forward to.
So, listen, everybody, as always, thanks for listening. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we'll look forward to talking to you next week. Hopefully, Davey and I will be back in person next week as opposed to this online shit.
Yeah, most likely we'll be looking forward to that. So, yeah, thanks again for tuning in, guys. This list sucks, and we'll see you next week.
Absolutely. Bye bye.